past 10 years or so, Netflix streaming competitors have spent unfathomable amounts of money on expensive programming to try to garner eyeballs. Disney Plus is maybe the most notable here, with the Marvel and Star Wars brands receiving pricey and high-profile streaming shows on a regular basis. But Warner Bros. Max, Paramount Plus, and NBC Universal's Peacock are no slouch either when it comes to spending money on splashy shows. Hell, Paramount Plus did a show a couple years ago starring Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren. That's not gonna be cheap. Then there's Tubi, the free service, where the original programming is kind of few and far between, and tend to be more in line with something like a TV movie sequel to the cancelled Canadian sci-fi show Winona Earp. Tubi has been around for 10 years now in the US. It's a FAST service, which stands for Free Ad-Supported TV. In other words, they're one of these services that's just quietly been on countless smart TVs and streaming devices for years, boasting a large catalog of mostly old stuff, and just generally not being talked about much when it comes to the streaming wars. But in May, something changed. According to the Los Angeles Times, reporting the latest Nielsen data, quote, May was Tubi's most watched month ever, with an average audience of 1 million viewers, up 46% from a year ago. The streamer edged out Disney Plus, which averaged 969,000 viewers. Tubi also easily beat NBC Universal's Peacock, Warner Bros. Discovery's Max, and Paramount Global's Paramount Plus, while also topping free competitors such as the Roku channel and Pluto TV. YouTube is the only free ad-supported streaming platform with more viewers than Tubi. End quote. Now, I heard that Tubi had been doing better and better, but this kind of shocked me, the Disney Plus part especially. Just the amount of hype and promotion that went into that service, especially at launch, it just seems unbelievable that it could have a month where it loses to Tubi. But hey, free is free, and the reasons for Tubi's explosive growth this year seem a lot clearer when you look at what's been going on elsewhere in streaming. Prices are up, and ads, even those within paid services, are just becoming the norm. Netflix is a big reason why, when it introduced a cheaper tier of the service with lower video quality and plenty of ads. It's apparently been a big success, if maybe not a massive game changer. According to Netflix's president of advertising, in countries where that ad tier exists, 40% of new signups now come from it. Now, how Netflix rolled all of that out, with a lot of people getting kicked off their old family or friends accounts, was maybe a little distasteful, but they were at least offering a new, cheaper option. Amazon Prime took a far less tactful approach and just inserted ads into the plan that everyone already had, which, speaking from experience, really takes you by surprise when you're just trying to catch up on the wheel of time and suddenly discover that you need to pay more a month to get the exact same experience you were paying for previously, but without the endless pharmaceutical commercials. And now other streamers are following suit to various degrees. Now, don't get me wrong, I get why they're doing this. I've made videos time and time again about how these huge streaming services were a massive mistake for Hollywood, and how legacy media, giving their shows and films for a quick payday on Netflix in the early days, only to try following Netflix's example 10 years too late, was just really devaluing their product in the minds of an entire generation. It's clear they're trying to put the rabbit back in the hat and go back to the tried and true days of pay cable. And maybe it'll even work for some of them. But for people who had years to get used to fairly affordable streaming subscriptions coming with no ads, it's just inevitably going to feel like a betrayal. Which brings us back to Tubi. If you're gonna have to put up with something interrupting your show either way, why not go for the free service? For a long time, I thought the main audience for these fast services was, getting up there in age. In their live channels and attempts to replicate the TV guide and on-demand experience, it just felt to me that that's kind of who this was for. Especially when you take into account that Tubi tends to foreground pre-2000 movies and shows like none of the big streamers really do. All of these things I just thought would appeal to an older crowd, an audience that would find comfort in a free service that reminded them of the television experience they were used to. But it turns out that the audience for these fast services may be much larger than that. Going back to that LA Times piece, quote, Tubi says 63% of its users describe themselves as cord nevers, people who have never subscribed to a pay TV package, or cord cutters, end quote. And they add that the median age of the Tubi viewer is 39, which I know probably doesn't seem all that young to most of you, but it is enough to garner them the youngest audience in streaming TV. And that fact kind of shocked me. Not gonna lie, I mean, this is considered the most highly prized age demographic for advertisers. And in May, they were more into Tubi than Disney+. This is the service that I honestly associated most with watching old Bogart movies and spaghetti westerns, alongside the occasional short-lived genre show like Fox's The Exorcist. But the more I dug into their catalog, the more it reminded me of Netflix streaming in, say, 2013. There's the occasional original bit of programming, including a fairly well-reviewed movie from last year starring 70s action legend and Jackie Brown star Pam Grier. I might actually have to watch that one. But the main feature here is definitely the massive back catalog that they've managed to amass. And it is really wildly varied. Now, at the top of that iceberg, you're going to be greeted with a lot of Fox-owned shows. Because, Tubi is not some scrappy, lovable upstart. They are owned by Fox. Well, what remains of it after the Disney buyout. Basically, the section of the company that Disney didn't want to buy. Now, that part of their catalog isn't surprising, but they also seem to be benefiting a lot from Warner Brothers and HBO material. Probably thanks to the content fire sale coming from this David Zaslav era of Warner Brothers. There are some pretty big and fairly recent titles like Aquaman and Birds of Prey, not to mention a lot of CW DC stuff. So that is another huge element of their library. But I think more than maybe anything, Tubi has been the beneficiary of the bloated peak TV landscape that only recently came to an end. It's absolutely packed to the brim with shows like The Nevers, the one-season Joss Whedon show that HBO quietly canned, or the Kelsey Grammer political drama Boss, which lasted 2 seasons on Starz back in 2011. There's just so many shows that for one reason or another aren't viewed as being all that valuable to their owners and are shuffled off to Tubi for what I assume is pretty cheap. Pair that with Tubi being very happy to pick up pre-2000 movies and films that the big streamers have a lot less interest in, plus a ton of reality TV, and you have a catalog that, while super uneven, is, in my opinion, maybe more compelling than a lot of the big streamers. And definitely much larger than Crackle, which was Sony's attempt at a very similar model to Tubi like 10 or so years ago. They're the ones who did Joe Dirt 2, in case you forgot. Anyway, Tubi's not a perfect service. The ad placements are really arbitrary and annoying sometimes. Many of the older movies aren't exactly displayed in the highest quality, and there's a lot of nothing documentaries that almost feel written by AI, crowding out the good ones that they do have. But with it being free and offering so much, I can clearly see why people are flocking to it. But what does this mean for the other streamers? Actually, let's just focus on Disney+. The other ones, a lot of them have been troubled since launch, but Disney+ was a huge success at launch. It has the big names and the big brands, not to mention a library of beloved classics. I mean, how could any service that features The Simpsons Season 4 go wrong? Well, this is not a video about the state of Marvel and Star Wars, but it's clear that a lot of these shows now, even the ones that are well received like Andor, are not catching the traction or interest that Disney probably assumed they would. This isn't to say that Andor or like X-Men 97 don't get discussed online a lot, of course they do, but they seem to have a hard time breaking out of their fandom bubbles and into the super mainstream discourse. Now, to be fair, I don't think this is a huge deal for X-Men 97, it's a revival of an old Saturday morning cartoon, but Andor is really expensive. As are, I assume, like the Boba Fett or Secret Invasion shows that I really think Disney thought would be big hits. And yeah, I do think a huge portion of this overall comes down to quality. It's been a while now since The Mandalorian Season 1 and WandaVision, and nothing they've released from the Star Wars universe or the MCU has taken hold culturally in quite that same way. And again, these are incredibly expensive shows. In that way, Disney Plus is kind of the anti-Tubi. Tubi has originals, but they're rarely attempting to be large-scale, effects-driven miniseries. They're generally inexpensive and far broader in genre and subject matter. And look, I don't want to pin the future of streaming on this service that has never really put out an original show that I'm a fan of, but I'm hoping that over time, Tubi can kind of create TV working from an older model. A model that younger people still clearly crave, as we saw with the Suits resurgence last year. Lower budgets, less effects driven, a little more episodic, but longer seasons. Maybe, not a full 22, but 13 to 18 at least. I think the rising success of Tubi and the other FAST services show that there is some dissatisfaction with what the big streamers are doing right now. Netflix is still Netflix, of course, but some of the other huge players probably need to change their approach. Ever-rising subscription prices paired with original streaming movies that release with little promotion and ultra-short TV seasons that come out like 1.5 to 3 years apart may not actually be what most viewers want. And yeah, it's easy to say, well, of course Tubi viewership is doing well, it's free to use. And I get that, but these FAST services have been readily available for a long time now. Like I said, Tubi is 10 years old, but this huge uptick, it's pretty recent. So I don't know what's coming with streaming TV, but I do think with the price hikes, with the chaos in Hollywood and the disappointments, something just has to change with streaming TV as it exists right now. I don't know if the FAST apps will end up being the answer to that, but they're at least not chasing the same Netflix model that all these other services have copied, and that alone is at least a little exciting. So, kind of a random fact about me, I'm currently trying this thing where I go from my smartphone to just using a flip phone. I mean, this is all very fresh, and I am pretty smartphone addicted, to be honest, which is why I'm happier than ever to have Brilliant.org as my sponsor. My brain has basically been screaming for stimulation, and Brilliant.org is there to fill that need with something that's truly useful. That's because they've made the process of learning way more fun and accessible than ever before. Brilliant.org helps you tackle math, science, and computer science concepts in a highly interactive way, and allows you to do it entirely on your schedule. Whether you're looking for a fun way to occupy your mind or buckling down to really dig into one specific topic, they've got your back. Spending just 30 minutes a day or so with them is both fun and builds our skills, without any of the stress that you might associate with some of these topics. So why not try out a class like Exploring Data Visually? It's one of so many that they have to offer. To try everything Brilliant.org has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit Brilliant.org/midnight or click on the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once, because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started, because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes.